There will be shortages in silver. Silver is needed for the green revolution. Gold is not needed. And central banks don't have silver in their vaults to suppress the price. So I think there will be a huge crisis around silver, and when this crisis arrives...
Willem Middelkoop delivers extremely interesting facts which could drive the price of silver much higher than it was ever before. This is the Cash Cow Guru. We won't waste your time, so let's get started. If you want to see more videos like this, make sure you subscribe so you won't miss our newest uploads.
When did the Second World War start? That was 1940. At 80 years is 2020. Yeah? When did the Second World War end? 1945. At 80 years is 2025. So we're in the same, let's say, period of crisis. Okay. And after the crisis, there was always a new spring. Silver might benefit most because it's poor man's gold.
Yes.
It's the only metal trading at less than 50% of the 1980 high.
Yes.
There will be shortages in silver. Silver is needed for the green revolution. Gold is not needed. And central banks don't have silver in their vaults to suppress the price. So I think there will be a huge crisis around silver. And when this crisis arrives and the paper silver system breaks down, the COMEX system, you could see silver going from $17 to $100 within 1 or 2 weeks. China and Russia understand the precious metal markets very well. They study it very well.
Yeah.
When they really want to do harm to the US, they'll buy all the gold and silver in the world and collapse the paper dollar system that way. Yeah. But the Chinese understand that will be seen as an act of war.
Broadly speaking, there is what they call an energy crisis in Europe. Just looking at the Dutch gas futures, it's 8 times higher than their 10-year average. How much of this was due to Russia alone?
Well, you know, we shouldn't forget that Putin said, I'm willing to keep supplying oil and gas to Western Europe, but I only have one demand. You should pay me in rubles, in gold, or Bitcoin. And then the Western countries, they said, well, we won't accept that. And that was the reason why Putin closed down the oil and gas to the West, and that has resulted in some kind of market panic, and there was a short squeeze, and now the citizens in Europe are confronted by energy bills which will be up 3, 4, 5 times compared to last year. And we, the Dutch, are a pretty rich country, but you also have countries in Europe which are much poorer. And this will cause havoc. Before this crisis, before the Ukraine war, we were all looking at the financial system and telling each other that the next phase would be the arrival of central bank digital currencies. And we thought that would be the new phase and in a way a monetary reset. And then the war started. And now we have the BRIC countries, so Brazil, Russia, India, China, Argentina just joined them. The Saudis have said they might join them. Now we have a group of over 140 countries who are not supporting the Western sanctions. So we only have a few dozen countries, the Western countries, who apply the sanctions on Russia. But the majority of the people live in countries, 6 billion people live in countries who don't support the sanctions. And we could have a move away from our dollar-based system to a system which is introduced by the BRICS countries, and they will say we will use our own system from now. And we see the first indications. We see the trading between the BRICS nations, in which Russia is supplying cheap energy to India and China, and India and China are paying with their own currencies. They're not paying with dollars anymore. So I see this as the very first stage of a move away from this dollar system.
The group, known by the acronym for its 5 core members, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, consists of more than a quarter of the world's GDP and about 40% of the global population. What's interesting to me, Willem, and this is my take, it was almost started as a marketing ploy back in the day, almost like, let's just put these group of misfits over here, you can't sit with us at lunch crowd. But now they've become almost a sleeping giant, or perhaps not really sleeping.
Well, it's a waking giant, actually. Because if you look at the current situation, and what always struck me, that if you look at the countries who applied the sanctions against Russia, if you follow the Western press, it's like all countries are applying sanctions to Russia now. But if you study it in detail, it's just the West. It's just the West. It's a few dozen countries, and there are over 140 countries who don't join the sanctions. That this doesn't make them Putin supporters, but I think they want to stay neutral. They're fed up with the Western double standards, and now more and more of these countries from Latin America, Middle America, Africa, the Middle East, and Asia have chosen to join the BRICS alliance. We've seen Algeria joining, we've seen Argentina joining, and there are rumors that more and more countries want to join, and now we have the BRICS really becoming a very, powerful alliance. And what I always say, it's the West against the rest of the world now. When I wrote The Big Reset in 2013, that thesis was about finding a new anchor for world's financial system. So finding a successor for the US dollar. Well, that could be a BRICS currency currently being developed, as Putin has said. But it also contains of debt restructurings, and we could see a gold revaluation as well and a dollar devaluation. So this plays out according to my thesis. We have the Western countries, let's say 1.5 billion people who support the sanctions, who support these Western actions against Russia. And you have over 6 billion people who live in countries who don't support the sanctions and who are behind this BRICS alliance or tend to be positive towards the BRICS alliance. And this has resulted in a few research papers from major banks, as you might remember, Zoltan Pozsar of Credit Suisse, writing that we are seeing the start of Bretton Woods 3.0. We've had a piece of research coming from ING Bank saying that the BRICS might be a new name in the reserve currencies, because ING analyst, he said that the BRICS might start to use a new world currency, a new reserve currency. So the signs are everywhere. China has made an official command by its foreign minister that the US should alter its course or face conflict, an inevitable conflict. And China also have made statements, and this has been very rare in Chinese foreign policy, that they are preparing for war. And we've seen a quote from a US general that the US has to prepare for the big one. They say what we're doing to support Ukraine is just the start. We have to prepare for the big one. Well, the big one can only be a confrontation with China. So that's why more and more people are starting to get nervous that you could end up into a road towards a World War III. And even the Pope has mentioned it and warned about that. The US knows it can't hold on to this unipolar superpower status. Even Germany and China, there was this surprise visit by the new German leader to Beijing last week, and they came out with a statement that both China and Germany support a multipolar world instead of a unipolar world. So, and the US knows this. The US knows you can't hold on to this dollar superpower status forever. And there will be a point in time where we have to sit around the table and discuss what will be the next phase for world's financial system. And then you should be able to find some common ground. And we know there have been a few conferences in which China took part, in which these kind of discussions have been been planned. We will see a gold revaluation at some point in time as being part of the monetary reset. And this statement is quite unique because central bankers don't like to discuss this part. But we've seen a gold revaluation in the past. We've seen it in the 1930s, where the US had a gold revaluation and a dollar devaluation by 40% to fix the crisis. And actually, his answer of the Dutch National Bank president, his answer followed a question from a Dutch journalist on national TV, how the Dutch National Bank would cope with losses. Now the interest rates are rising and you'll have massive losses in the bonds portfolio, because this will be a problem for many, many central banks, and especially in Switzerland, where the National Bank bought all these assets and now is coping with huge losses in its portfolio. Well, since 2014, I always said Bitcoin is digital gold, but we've seen the rise of thousands of altcoins, and most of these altcoins, or shitcoins, like most people call them, these are just Ponzi schemes, and some of the people active in the crypto space, they're worse than Wall Street bankers. So with the popping of this crypto bubble, I think that really supports the case for just physical gold. And we've seen, always ask yourself, what would central bankers prefer to do? Use Bitcoin to modernize the system, to have a monetary reset, or to use physical gold, which they own, and they're busy creating the central bank digital currencies, and they are willing to use the central bank digital currencies as their form of crypto. And there's a risk that they will try to sabotage some of the crypto developments, maybe close on and off ramps so people can't trade their Bitcoin into fiat. So I think there's a strong push for central bank digital currencies in almost all countries. You see that, and there you see the same common ground in China, in Europe, and in the US. I think digital assets are here to stay, and Bitcoin being the first digital assets, and being maybe the soundest form of digital assets, is here to stay. We've seen all these boom and bust cycles in crypto. It started with Mt. Gox. When was it? Almost 10 years ago. So I think it's here to stay. But it's very healthy that there's a shakeout, and that the bad actors who are running these Ponzi schemes and just creating, money and value out of thin air are being cleared from the game. We reached the end of cheap money. We reached the end of cheap energy. We reached the end of cheap labor. And we reached the end of cheap solutions. And cheap solutions is printing money by central banks. This has solved each and every crisis in the last few decades. But you can't fix inflation by printing money. You can't fix an energy or food problem by printing money. So central bankers are stuck. And if you look on a personal level, I live in the Netherlands. I also live in Switzerland. Well, also in Switzerland, the cost for electricity, they tripled. And this is the situation for most people living in Europe. And here in Dubai, of course, you use a bit less energy for heating, but you lose a lot of energy for cooling. And if you look what's happening worldwide, there's this major and alarming and almost scary trend of higher prices for food and energy, and this is killing especially the poor and the middle class.
Shortages in physical copper markets. Codelco, world's biggest copper miner, has proposed a premium of $140 a ton for 2023. That would be an over 33% increase.
I was surprised by this myself, because you always look at the future markets and the spot markets, and then you see a copper price is quite low. But what do we learn? Codelco is the largest copper producer worldwide. It's a state company, Chile. And they aren't selling their copper for the spot price. They aren't selling their copper for the future price. They have premiums up to 30 to 80% for the different countries. So the copper price we all see on CNBC, forget about that. That's not the price physical copper is being sold for. We see the same in the silver situation, where prices are being held down and managed or even manipulated by selling all these paper contracts, all these future of speculators pretending they can deliver the copper. But this is also a market which will break down somewhere in the not too distant future. Gold in the end, and even silver will have the largest advantage, and people never understand. So how can gold be a great beneficiary of this change? While gold is going down now, but you've been long enough in financial markets to know the first move is the false move. So I think there's a huge demand for physical gold and silver. There was a study by Roman Manley on the physical silver.
Yeah.
Fleeing from the vaults in London,
Right.
in Chicago.
Yes.
So pretty soon we might reach a point where there will be maybe a divide between the paper price of silver and the physical price of silver. We've seen the same thing happening with palladium 3 years ago. There were a lot of paper shorts in palladium. Then there was too much demand for the physical stuff. The paper shorts needed to cover, and palladium price went up 3x. And I think we could have the same development in gold, silver, and also platinum. After the start of the Lehman crisis, Russia and China started to buy a lot of physical gold. And now we get into the end game of this US based financial system. And actually, I think these are the first stages of the monetary reset. And when we look back 10 years from now, or 8 years from now, when we look back in 2030, we'll say, Jesus, so much has changed in the last few years.
We hope you enjoyed this video. This was the Cash Cow Guru. Stay blessed all.